Ja. Jeg tænker vi det sidste der. Hvis ikke du er travlt. Men jeg vil sige, at vi er nok bare sat ude. Det er ikke stof på min kalender, vi skal noget ikke sammen.
After strength training, quick refill of proteins. Window of time and something.
Kan vi måle samling?
Ja, det burde den.
Is that a supplement?
Der burde være højt.
Kan vi lige samle noget?
Starter vi nu?
Fedt. Det kan godt have det der. Men du tjekker det ikke.
Starter vi bare?
Det var lidt.
Det er først halvt program.
Nej, kvart år sagde.
Kvart år.
Men jeg tror, at han kommer til at sidde ned. Det skal nok. Nej, jeg tror, at han kommer til at stå ned. Det er lidt ikke. Jeg prøver det på siden. Nu, okay. Det kræver lidt, at de sidder der med spændt og tænker, hvad ligger svømmen på forsiden. Nu ligger svømmen. Men ja, men kan vi se, hvad man har på. Man ser sig selv.
Altså, jeg tænker om det.
Yeah, and also there, we're trying as well. Some of them.
Jeg tænker fordi det er det der med, hvordan det er.
Some of them just drink it like it's wine.
Så jeg tænker at Gorte skal er i der er i der er ikke det. Det er også noget med, at jeg udfordrer jer også. Vi skal ikke sidde derude og fordi der er en ting, der er svømme, men det er også noget med, så det tænker jeg altså. Jeg tænker faktisk, at det er sådan noget, jeg blev der
5 vis.
Men det kunne bare ja, eller også en mulighed for at 3-4 km.
All right, everyone. So, anyways, the agenda has just switched a little bit depending on what version you have. We're going to start with the National Training Center talk, and then we'll follow up with Thomas and myself on the national program. And maybe very fitting today is I think the 3-year anniversary of Paulus's passing, so I think it's very appropriate that we are talking about the National Training Center because he had a big influence on Danish swimming back in the day. So anyways, fortunate to have Martin Truens and Mads Hansen here to describe basically their first 3.5 months in business at the National Training Center, and look forward to seeing what you have to deliver. I'm sure there may be some questions, but the whole idea is this is a big team that we're trying to create and move forward. So thanks, guys, and carry on.
Thank you. Yeah, the thing Dean just said about Paulus is also the reason why Winnie and Olaf will be a little bit later. They have a small family reunion with Ashwin in Spain. Yeah, 3 years ago already. I want to start out with our view on what we think the NTC is and is not. Some of you last night already got a little glimpse of that, but just briefly to summarize that we are completely in line on that and that we understand how we look at it. So what it's not a club. We don't have any members. All the people that swim at the NTC are still members of their own club. And it's clearly not for everybody. You need to have a certain profile, certain standard you have to apply to. So what we clearly don't do is we don't recruit any swimmers. That's not in our interest. And that might be a little different from the past, I don't know, but that's the way we look at it. And what is the NTC? It's a facility. It's a facility for those who meet the criteria laid down by the federation, and a facility in the sense that we try to assist swimmers and also their coaches. That's an important addition, I think, in their development. So, to briefly get back to the summary of last night, the NTC has a structure, the facility, the institute, or whatever you want to call it, that makes it possible to develop to the highest level, which in our sport, where very small differences make the difference between winning and losing, is the area we need to go to. And a club can simply not always provide that, because you have 600 members or 1,000 or whatever, and you cannot get to that individualized level. And if you can, you need to make some sacrifices. Yeah? So I think it's a good thing to have it. So having that straight, we want to talk with you a little bit on how we look at training, our training philosophy, and also how we look at coaching a little bit. And in that talk, our experiences of the first 4 months now are displayed kind of. And I will drag Mads in and out, and if you think I'm talking bullshit, you just intervene. Okay, if you have questions, either in English or in Danish. In Danish, he will answer, and in English we can both do it. Yep. So, talking about training philosophy. It's an athlete-centered approach, which means that it's all about the athletes. We're not swimming. It's about the athlete and the development of the athlete. And there's a trainer, of course, in this case the two of us, and there are members around it, what we call team around team members. And that circle, that's quite important, to understand that the athlete is at the center of it. The coach drives it, because in the end he is held accountable, and the team supports it. Yeah. And that inevitably makes that we have a multidisciplinary approach. We're not on our own. We have a whole team of people displayed in this picture, which makes it a team performance. So there's a physiotherapist, there's a sport psychologist, a scientist, physiology, biomechanics, in every area you can think of. A doctor, sports doctor, nutritionist, strength and conditioning trainer. They are all very close to the team. And I think that's the setting I described as being the facility or the institute. And that's quite unique, and I think that's a key mark of international elite level sports. If you don't have that in our sports, I think at the end you will reach a ceiling. You will reach a level where you simply cannot go any further. You need this. The secret of getting ahead is getting started, and that's kind of how we started in January with this statement. Making clear to the swimmers that it's about a process. Their development, it's a process. Directed to progress, so moving forward, bringing results. But it's very important you see it in this order. Start with the process to make progress, to bring results. If we start at the results part, we lose the picture. And we get a lot of disappointments probably. It's all about development. And in the end, of course, it's about results. But if you don't develop, there will be no results. So, keeping this in mind, we had to define a starting point. And this is the circle we are all in every day of the year. We either start training after a holiday, we strive for some adaptations, and then we hope they swim very fast at the competition. Or the other way around, we just had a competition. We go back to training in order to adapt to be better. This circle, we are always in this circle. That's our job. And I think it's very important to define the starting point. In order to do so, it's good to know our background a little bit, because that has a lot to do with the way we look at it. My background is one of science. I did my PhD a couple of years ago at the Free University in Amsterdam, working on altitude training, a work in progress. The title is not a coincidence. At that moment I was already working as a swim coach for about 10 years. And like I said, it's a process to progress to results. This is also a work in progress. It's never finished. There will be new scientific studies that probably overrule what I found. And that's the way we all progress. New ideas, new perspectives. So we need to stay open. And I find joy in keeping writing, in this case in Dutch, or maybe in the future in English, about my work, about how I look at things. And the funny thing is, that is a little bit where I met Matt as well. And really soon he is in a similar kind of situation.
Thank you for that picture, by the way.
But I couldn't find it yet. So this is the closest thing to it. He did his master's degree in Canada, and will graduate or get your official
I already
thing.
am done.
Yeah,
So
but you get your official thing, right?
yeah. The 8th of June, I'm going to Canada to get a cake, and then they take a picture of you and give you a diploma, and it's really nice.
And then you get flying.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Well, we found each other a little bit in this area. His particular interest is in the world of biomechanics, and he will show you a few things later on where we work with. And it was, we had a good communication in terms of understanding, and I think that's very important if you want to collaborate, that you understand each other and that you feel the same about the way of working. So knowing this background, it's not a surprise that we like to measure a lot of stuff. And the question is to measure also always to know? Or in different words, how would you like to use scientific knowledge in sports practice? The first thing I did is I looked at how can it help me to define those factors determining performance in swimming. I think that's very important, because those are the factors you want to measure. Those are the factors you want to develop and train and improve on. And if you're able to do it, then you can start measuring them, monitoring, and you can evaluate performance. And if you're good at that, then you can start doing some mathematic tricks, some modeling, some optimizing of performance, to see where are the weak spots, where are the strengths. So where does the focus need to be? And don't get confused by the next slide. But this is a swimmer. This is how I look at swimming from my scientific background, the power balance of swimming. Seems very complicated, it isn't that complicated. It's just a swimmer who has a certain stroke type and is going to swim a certain distance in a certain environment, altitude, hot weather, cold weather, outside, indoors. A lot of audience, no audience, parents in the stands, mad coaches, happy coaches, all kinds of factors that can influence the swimmer, which also has a brain that is going to give signals to the musculoskeletal system, and in the end that brings the whole picture in action. The metabolic system, the muscles of course, the bones, everything starts moving, and that results in a swim speed. And at a certain point you might get tired, and that's a circle. This circle you can write down in different ways in this formula, which basically says that the swimming speed V is related to the metabolic power, so aerobic, anaerobic, times an efficiency, which in the case of swimming is a propelling efficiency, because we lose some efficiency to the water, and a mechanical efficiency. This mechanical efficiency we have in any activity we do, whether we cycle or run or a row or whatever. That's always there. We lose a lot of our energy to heat. That's just the way it is. But in the case of water, it's even worse. So that's why we are the slowest sport on Earth. And that's not going to change. That's just the way it is. But it brings to play that we have to be extremely smart in order to become better. And this factor here, the A, is something we have to deal with. That has to do with the swimmer itself. Body composition, how tall, big hands, big feet, or small hands, small feet. Positioning in the water. That's something I think we look for when we look for talent. And that's something we work with every day when we try to align them in the water. Yeah, so what I'm trying to show you here is that we have a way of looking at swimmers, not putting them into numbers, but using the numbers to do our measurements, to make our training, and to improve. I think you need to have a construct, and this is ours. When you translate that to performance, there are basically three areas, in my opinion, where you can work on. You can train. So, for example, you work on technique, on strength, on endurance, on resilience, mental factors. Or you can work on not getting injured, so prevention. That can be in the area of nutrition, or in the area of rest, sleep. Maybe physio, massage, or whatever you need to do. And your general health, hygiene, jet lag protocol, stuff like that. And there is the area of innovation. And I think we have to deal with two things there. One is, of course, the rules of the sport. We're limited. We cannot swim more than 15 meters underwater. We cannot take EPO or whatsoever. And those are the rules of the sport. And the things we innovate on, they need to be applicable to the daily sports practice. For example, we can think of many things we like to measure, like VO2 max. But I think none of you is doing that on a daily basis. Or am I wrong? No. So that doesn't really make sense. That's maybe nice, like twice a year, but not in a daily situation. So that's not suited for most of the work we do. So I would like to add to measure is to know. Yes, if you know what you're measuring, then that might be true. And it's always important to have the broader picture. So suppose you want to measure lactate. The value itself doesn't tell you everything. Lactate in reference to speed tells you a bit more. Lactate in reference to speed and stroke frequency tells you a whole lot more. Saying that means we need to always look at the complete picture. And a lot of time testing is developed to measure just one thing. And then we forget about the rest. I think that's wrong. So when we look at testing, we have three areas. The relative intensity, the PI of the formula. I just named 4 things. You can name like 10 things, but these 4 just popped up in my brain. You could measure oxygen uptake, or lactate, or heart rate, or RPE. I made the last 2 red because those are, in my opinion, the only 2 ones you can do without a lot of trouble on a daily basis. Even lactates, you're not going to take every session. The swimmers will not like that very much. Not that that's always relevant, but I think it should make sense. The absolute intensity, the speed of the equation, the V, would be nice if we could measure mechanical power like we did in cycling. They have the SRM system, or in rowing, they can do it now. But we can't, unfortunately. So we have to deal with only one thing we can really measure, and that's velocity. Or time, actually, and then assuming the boost stays the same. And the technical measurement. That's basically the rest, which indicates the relevance of it in our performance. And video is a perfect tool to do it. but you're not going to videotape 4 hours a day and look back at home. That's not working. So you do that for a short evaluation for details, using 1 or 2 swimmers. You can't do that with your whole squad. So the thing we're bound to is frequency, and they can count strokes and we can count strokes. That's what we can do. And that's what we do actually, because those values make most sense to us. Mads, if you want to take it from here with the things, how we do it, and how we develop that into a testing system.
Yeah. So, again, like Martin said, like we're looking for really simple parameters. So when we do our testing, we use these little things. This is an accelerometer. And you all have them in your mobile phones, and they're used in a lot of ways. Like they count your steps, they will show you if like you're moving fast forward or you're stopping or whatever. But you can also use it in swimming because it is so small and it's waterproof, and it's fairly easy to just like tape it to a swimmer and have them swim with it, and it will give you a lot of information about what they're actually doing in the water. But again, you don't want too much information because you want to keep it simple so you can actually use it on a day-to-day basis. So what we use in our testing is, of course, we use the RPE, which is like the rate of perceived exhaustion. So how hard does the swimmer think it is? That is very individual. Of course, some swimmers think it's really hard, some don't. There's the swimming velocity, which we all get. Like we get the time from when they start to when they finish, and we have a distance. So that is an average velocity. And then we have stroke count and stroke frequency. And that is where this thing comes in, because this one will count strokes. Just like if you tell the swimmer to like count your strokes on a 50, this will almost always give you the same result. Sometimes the swimmer miscounted. This one will never do that. What it also gives you is like it gives you the time between each stroke. So when the swimmer is swimming, you might have a starting frequency and a finishing frequency, but this thing will pick that up every time. And that way you get a really accurate average frequency for the swimmers. So we do 3 kinds of testing. So we do a skills test. We don't use this for that. A skills test is basically just start using video, where we measure to 15 meters, where we analyze on certain parameters about like how did they get into the water, how fast do they get to 15 meters, and we look at that video and try to learn from it and try to optimize it. But we do it the same way every time. We do a turn, again using video, underwater, above water, 5 meters in, 10 meters or 15 meters out, measuring around like parameters. Some of you guys were in Antwerp, and it's basically the same system, where we just get some information on how fast do they turn, how do they swim in, how do they swim out, and you can evaluate on that. And then a finish, where we measure the last 5 meters in. That is like pretty standard, and like most people have done that. So basically it just looks like this. And we use Christian Kaiser Hartz from Team Denmark. He helps us with this stuff. And he gets a lot of video, and then he sends us back some numbers, and then we talk. But it's something that is fairly easy to do, just videotaping. The next thing is the step test. So the step test is to determine certain aerobic parameters around the surface. So we use the step test to determine like what kind of like effort is the swimmer actually swimming at when they're at a certain speed and at a certain amount of strokes. So what we use here is normally we go, for the freestylers, we go 6 times 250 meters and decreasing, so they have to go faster and faster. And we get information on their strokes from the accelerometer. So with that information, we get the speed that they go, the stroke rate that they use, and the amount of strokes that they use. So with that information, we take that and say like, okay, can we determine like certain aerobic values that we can use in training? And that's what we do. So, for example, this morning in practice, we did 3 800s that the swimmers could divide any way they wanted to, like 2 400s, 4 200s, 8 100s. But it had to be A1. So for Daniel Skoning, you know him, he had to go 109s, holding 26 strokes per length. We got that information from this, because we know that that is his basic aerobic level. There will be no accumulation of lactate, but it will be hard enough to keep him engaged. And the fact that there's a stroke number on it makes him have to be efficient on his technique. He can't just keep cruising 109s with 33 strokes. He'll have to actually concentrate on being efficient and stable in his swimming. So that's what we use the step test for, to have this aerobic value in terms of speed and stroke count. And we have a stroke rate for it as well. Then we have, this is the heart rate that goes with it. So Lars Johansen, some of you probably know him, he comes in and helps us as well. This goes back to the slide that Martin used before. We get a heart rate as well. So on top of the information I mentioned before about speed, about stroke count, we can also get a heart rate, which gives us more information about like how hard is this for the swimmer, which makes it easier for us to accurately determine, is this the effort that we want from the swimmer. And it's a really good heart rate system. It's kind of cool. It's an antenna on the pool deck, and all the swimmers get this sensor on them, and it picks the heart rate up when they swim throughout the set. So all 6 times 250, we get a heart rate for every second. So we know exactly how they go up and how they go down, and what their heart rate is at all times. So that helps us like determine even more accurate, like, is this the right aerobic level that we want to see? And then there's some numbers that you can use in order to say like, what is 60%, 70%, 80%? What does that mean in terms of velocity? So how fast are they going? In terms of the time per 100 and their frequency. The next thing, we use this a bit more here. This is where the real strength comes in. We do 850s. A swim, a kick, and a pull. 850s are on 130, and we have the accelerometer on the swimmers so that we get their stroke count and their frequencies. Based on that, you can get a whole lot of information. But the main thing that you can see that you can't really see in other tests is that you can compare the results from swimming, kicking, and pulling. So you have a value of swimming, a certain speed. You have a value of kicking and a value of pulling. And if you do some mathematical things around the slope of the graph in swimming, the swimming speed, the slope of the graph in the kicking speed, and in the pulling, you can actually find out like how much does the kick add value to the swimming. So how leg dominant is this swimmer when they swim. And that tells us a lot about like, well, where is the... You have some swimmers that are maybe not that good in kicking, it really shows up on this test that there's hardly any added value. Like they maybe they don't pull as fast as they swim, but the values that we get from it is that like you don't add a whole lot with your kick. So that means that there is some kind of technical improvement that needs to happen on the kick, or maybe a power improvement. But this is where the accelerometer is really good because it gives us so much information about every part of like the way that the swimmer swims. And you can go into even further detail, but you want to keep it somewhat simple too. So on these graphs, like you can see, like we have the stroke rate, we have the lap time, and then you get this slope. And it's a really neat tool in order to analyze swimmers. Then, this is our general guideline. So, like I told you before, we use the step test to determine certain aerobic efforts. So what I told you about this morning, our 3 800s that Daniel did in 110, 109, that was A1. So that is like 60 to 75% work to rest ratio, 1 to 10, no more than 5,000 meters of volume and so on. But this just shows like the different values that we use. And it's individual. So once you have this in a set, if it says 400 meters of A1, the swimmer knows this is the time I have to go, these are the strokes that I have to do, and it gives them a more like keeps them honest, and it keeps them pretty stable in the practice. I don't know, do you want to add anything to this?
Well, yes, I think that it's good to stress that it's general. You saw in one of the slides before, there was another picture. This one. Suppose we have two swimmers that do a kind of a similar step test result. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are identical twins or something. And that's sometimes where this test comes into play. It's what I call work to rest test. So you can do anything you like. It can be like a normal training actually. So suppose you choose 100 meters and 200 meters. Let's say 200 meters. You do 2 200s, for example at A1 level, and you do that 6 times in a row. Every set you take away some of the rest. In some swimmers you will see that at a certain work to rest ratio they actually don't recover anymore. And there will be swimmers that keep recovering quite a bit until the end, even with 10 seconds of rest. So you mentioned Daniel. I put next to Daniel Matthias. They both want to swim a fast 200 freestyle, but they're different people. And I think it's no surprise that Matthias more fits this profile. At the end, he will just have a heart rate that's almost max, and in the rest doesn't recover much. And Daniel will have spikes all the way down almost to the end. Yeah? And I think it's good to realize that testing brings results, but you still need to look at the individual behind it. And this is a good way, I think, to make that a bit more specific. So if you look into that picture with the training guidelines, this is not the same for everybody. It's just the general picture. So work to rest ratio of 10 to 1 on A1 might be perfect for Daniel, but it's not the best solution for Matthias. He might need a 9 to 1 or 8 to 1 to keep him in that same area. And suppose he goes to a 10 to 1 ratio, then at the end of the practice he's not swimming A1 anymore, but he's swimming A2. And there are moments we don't want that as coaches. And a lot of moments we don't know that as coaches. We just force them to make their time and we don't care how they do it, just hit your times. Because that's the easy thing for us to see. We try to discriminate a bit more. That's why where the number of strokes come into play. That's for us a very good way to see, okay, they're having trouble now. They cannot remain their efficiency at this speed anymore with this work to rest ratio. What do we want? Do we want a physiological effect in this training, so we don't care, just go? Heart rate goes up, they lose some efficiency, but that's okay. Or do we say, no, we want you to stay in perfect shape. We want you to be able to maintain your technique. Then we need to adjust a little bit, give them a little bit more rest or bring the fractions down. So that's how you can play with it. Same on, of course, A2, A3 level. And that's all aerobic. So this comes out of the step test. These tests, or these indicators come out of the 50s. The anaerobic capacity training sets, they come out of that. Also there, they get a stroke number. Because unless it's like just go all out, which sometimes happens, but a lot of times we train at their pace, so they need to do like 200 pace, which is not all out. It's fast swimming, but it's not all out. So they need to be able to control it and to repeat it maybe 5, 6, 7 times without losing any efficiency. So that's how we started. The second week actually of January. We did all the testing, and it was clear that that was not going to happen just by saying it. We needed to organize a lot, and Tim Denmark helped us a lot to basically do it all in 3 days. Yeah, we had lab testing here, we had testing in the pool. I think it was a very efficient way for us to start up and to get a lot of information about the new swimmers. And I think that helped us a lot in planning the training afterwards. And planning the training, it's no secret. We should not make it more complicated than this. We just know, okay, there's a competition, in this case the qualifications for Worlds. That's where we need to work to. So there is a predetermined moment, in this case the beginning of April, where we had to be in top shape. So the whole plan is designed to that. And then we start to play a little bit with the modality of the training. So based on the test result, we think this athlete needs a lot of aerobic work, or needs more technical work, or more speed work. That's where we start to play. And basically we ended up with 3 training groups.
4.
Yeah, 3 training groups and Pernille. She was a group on her own. So we had a group which I would define as a training as a 200-400 group. Swimming in the end 200 and 100 mostly. And one time I did 400 a couple of times. And we had a 100-200 group performing mostly in the 100. And we had 50. Yeah. So knowing this is basically how we looked at it. We started with all the testing well, these are the 3 days I talked about. This was all in the laboratory. We went training, a training block of 4 weeks, basically. I will show you later on. Then we had another block of 4 weeks, and then we had testing again. Yeah, because we wanted to see if things developed in the direction we wanted to. We choose deliberately to do it this way and do not compete in that first part. Competitions were here, and we choose that way because we wanted to get to know the swimmers in their training, in their mental state, in everything before we went to the competitions. Then in March, Antwerp, Edinburgh as a block, some recovery, and then the last phase, learning from the competition. What do we need to be even better here? And that's what we try to do. And then we had a little break afterwards, which I think not all of them were used to having a little break, but I think it's good for the brain to step away, to refocus, reload, reflect also, instead of being back next month and just doing again what you always do. And also for us, we wrote evaluation reports, we sat down with the swimmers. This is what we observed in the first 3.5 months. This is where we think you can improve and should work on. How do you look at that? That's the way we work, and we will continue to work that way for the rest of this season at least. And we are interested in their input. So if we look at those blocks, block basically consists of 4 weeks. 4 weeks where the first 3 weeks build up. Sometimes in the number of sessions from 8 to 9 to 10. Sometimes it's always 10, depends on the phase of the season. 3 strength sessions, at least 3 dryland sessions. With the 3 dryland sessions, I mean the sessions where we do a bit more work on the core. Before every training they do something, so basically there are 10 dryland sessions. But most of them are focusing on mobility, flexibility, some coordinated work, activation of the shoulder area. The 3 I mentioned here are really those that has a little bit more physical impact. And then if you look at a typical week and the flow of the week, this is kind of an example. On Monday morning it's usually technique and aerobic kicks. And that doesn't mean there's no volume. This can be a session of 6K, but it's relatively low intensity. Then there's strength training that day, and that's combined with sprints. In the morning, somewhat more strict aerobic work, like the work Mas talked about, so with stroke count, with times, and some fast kicking. At night, high intensity work. And that depends on the phase of the season. That can be some aerobic build-up work, that can be threshold work, that can be anything dependent on the swimmer. Wednesday is, well, most swimmers will not agree, but I think it's relatively easy day, and we have some skills. Then Thursday is basically a copy of Tuesday, where depending on the phase of the season, this can be a bit different. If I choose, usually this goes more to tolerance and anaerobic work instead of the Tuesday. And then Friday is kind of a copy of the Monday. And then on Saturday, it's usually a pretty long aerobic day because the rest of the Saturday is off and it's Sunday. So this is kind of a normal flow of the week. And then from that, knowing that you go through individual programs, well, it's not really important to go through this, but just an example how we get from the unit plan to the training blocks to the program itself. And as you can see the different training groups. Basically, in this case, it's 2 groups, probably because Vanilla, when she was there, Rika wasn't there. So they do different things, and even 3 kick sets. Then, like I said, you get back to the same circle again. We trained, we competed, we evaluate. And it's very important, I think, to have that moment, to get back and get yourself back in the circle again with the new conditions, which hopefully are different than when you started, because else you didn't progress. And then we have to look, okay, where do we need to find the improvement? And in swimming, I will put this all down, it reads a bit easier. I see 3 elements basically. Sometimes you have swimmers that are pretty strong, so their propulsion element is quite good, but they're still not very efficient. And that usually has to do a lot with that they swim with a lot of resistance. So no clean entries, body position is not optimal. It's important to recognize when people are not as fast as you want them to be, where is the problem? Is that in resistance or in just not being strong enough? Well, when we go through the evaluation of our races, we saw, in my opinion, too many swimmers of our team that were not able to finish the race the way I like to see it. So they died a bit too much. What is that? Is that strength? Is that physiology? A combination? Mental weakness? Can be a lot of things. So you need to dig into that to define, okay, we think this is the area we need to improve on. And that's what we do in our evaluation reports and in our talk with our swimmers. What is the area we're going to invest in most, and what is the area we think we can make quick wins? Well, and then you need to have a perspective of how you do it. So if I look at improving mechanical propelling efficiency, I always look at stroke length first. And maintaining the length in your race, usually if you do a race analysis, that's what goes wrong. They lose their length. So then the training should focus on maintaining that length, and that's basically strength endurance what we talk about. Or there's a technical issue. For example, in backstroke or freestyle, they lose connection between arms and legs, or between the propulsion of the left and the right arm. That's what I call, if you are more continuous in your propulsion, there's almost no time difference between the two. So that's something you can look into, and the accelerometer is very useful to help us with that. Or do we need to look more into a metabolic perspective? And then you could focus more on rhythm, for 400, 800, 1500 swimmers. That might be a very useful approach. Keeping 3 meter stroke length over 1500 meters, that's not given for a lot of swimmers. Maybe Sun Young, but he's the exception. Most of them, they need to have their rhythm and need to have their groove, basically. Right? So based on the profile of the swimmer, I think you should always look in what is necessary there. And the swimmer itself, we have a good example in our own team. One of the swimmers having a pretty big difference in strength in the right and the left side of the body, which we are not able to solve in 1 week or not even in 1 month. That needs a serious investment. Is it harming performance? I don't know. There's no huge problem in terms of injury. But when the swimmer gets tired, there is clearly a loss of efficiency. The upper body and the lower body are not communicating anymore. And it's very visible. So that's something we need to respect. Okay, now we see there's a huge difference in strength on the left side and the right side. If we want to solve this issue, that's going to take at least 10 weeks, or probably even more, because that swimmer has been doing that for maybe 10 years. So you also need to look at that. And we don't only look at the water, we also look on the dry lands to solve issues. And a lot of times, issues like I just mentioned are much easier to solve on dry land, because you can talk to the swimmer while it's happening. And in the water, we always talk afterwards. Or we have to whistle and then we stop again, and well, you know how it works. Yeah, so this is basically how we work from a perspective of looking at what's the meat we have in our pool, the swimmers, the testing battery we use, how we go from there to training, to competition, to evaluation, and to adjustments. I think this is a good time for your input now, before we progress to the next phase. If there is any input or questions.
You're putting on mental efficiency there, overlap. What are you thinking about?
Well,
more or less, or not at all, or yeah.
Too much is obviously not a good plan. So the freestyle is, I think, the nicest example where sometimes people swim like this, but you know how it works. I think that's not a very metabolically efficient way of swimming. So that's what I mean with overlap. You can have that in any swim race.
But I can see in general it's probably a lot of swimmers, but a lot of Danish swimmers are swimming a lot of overlap in their aerobic sets. I'm just like, wouldn't it be better you say continuous propulsion? It goes like with your heartbeat is going up, probably. The frequency is a little bit higher, I would think, and getting it out of them at some stage. It's very, very hard to do it when they're senior swimmers.
Well, that's the thing I talked about before a little bit. That's the choice you need to make as a coach. Do you want this set to be mechanically efficient, or do you want them just to have a higher physiological impact? If you want to address this issue of a swimmer doing too much overlap, I think we should force them in the right technique, so more towards continuous propulsion, and probably that means you're not swimming 2K in a row, but maybe 200, because they can simply not maintain that technique. That's the choice you need to make, and that's different for coaches, but also different for swimmers. I mean, if you're interested in the long distance, you cannot avoid doing long distance. That's just the way it is. More questions? I know you have more questions. You can ask them in Danish too.
So how do you adjust again with adjusting the frequency, the stroke length and so on? You measure that with the world database? Or?
That's a good point. We have a benchmark, and it's really something you should do yourself as well. It's not a coincidence. If you look at I did a lot of data on 200 freestylers, because I used to work with some pretty good 200 freestylers, both female and male. The funny thing is, if you take swimmers with a similar body size, world level 200 freestyle, the range of frequencies they swim in is relatively small. There are exceptions. Michael Phelps, for example, he did very good times with a lower frequency compared to most of his competitors. But most of them are in a range of 2 or 3 in rate. That's, to me, that's not a coincidence. That's apparently where swimming at that speed is efficient. So we use the benchmark, yes, for sure. And it doesn't mean you can be different. Of course you can be different, but there must be a good reason to be different. I think that's actually a very good point, the benchmarking. I had to put that in as well. We always try to show the swimmer the perspective. I always hope that they have the ambition to become the best in the world. So if you have that ambition, you have to know what it is to be the best in the world. What are they doing? How does that look like? So for example, with the fly kick frequency underwater, for me it was very easy to make visible to a couple of my swimmers that they were having a frequency which was 30 lower than the best in the world. So that's a very simple way of saying, if you want to improve, I think you need to fix something. And these are the numbers. So that benchmark is really important.
I thought it was a really good way of showing it too. So it was like underwater kicking for girls, like this kick rate should be about 140 kicks per minute. In the underwater phase after the turn and after the start. And a very easy way of like making it visible to a swimmer is to have to do vertical kick, do 24 kicks in 10 seconds. Because that is 140 kick rate. And then when they count there and they get to 19 in 10 seconds, they're like, oh, that's like, yeah, that's where you're at. But this is where you need to go without losing efficiency, but getting to like understanding that there is like a means of improving here and how to get there. But it starts by acknowledging that like that is an area of like you can improve, showing them so they understand it, and then start working on it.
Other questions?
You don't use any lactate testing when you're doing the step test?
Yes, we do. And we do that for the simple reason that there is a database in Danish swimming where quite a few of the swimmers now training at the NTC are part of. So to have some feedback about their past, that's why I use it. But normally I would not use it, no. And it has been a big discussion in the Netherlands. I was in the beginning not allowed to do my own testing, being a federation coach. Then I did my own testing anyway, but I also did the testing they wanted me to do. Then at a certain point I just said, okay, I have both testing. These are the results. Let's take a look at it. And I don't know why, but after that they said, okay, you can do your own testing. We don't want to waste any money on lactates if you don't want to use them. I think I wanted that. But it doesn't mean, sorry, that's a good addition, that lactates are useless. It's just that I have a different framework of testing. And the reason I don't use lactates is because I think they're more vulnerable to variation. So if a swimmer had a different breakfast, it's already quite affected by it. Or if you come from school and you have a stressful day, your basic level can be a bit higher. The funny thing is I started measuring them here before they did anything. So like a 0 level lactate. The difference between people could be 2 in value. So some of them had like 0.6. And some of them doing nothing had 2.6. That's quite interesting to know. And then when they started the first cycle of the test, some of them actually dropped from 2.6 to 1.5 or something. And the ones having 0.6 went to 0.8. And so it's that opened the eyes of Lars as well, actually. He was not used to doing a 0 lactate measurements, but I did it because of the reason I just explained. There's quite a bit of variation.
Did you do that lactate testing from like standard procedure before? Did they all lie down for 15 minutes or 20 minutes, or did they just come to the pool set in YouTube?
No, they do it the way they've always done it. That's what I told him, because else it would not make sense if you change the whole protocol. And
I was thinking before, your 0 point lactate. Was one
yeah,
coming
they
driving
are,
from home, and the other one was
no.
too late and be biking 10 kilometers.
No, they are in the pool at least for, I think 30 minutes, 20-30 minutes, but it's not that they're laying down or something. They're relaxing and preparing. That's always the same, but it's not completely zero.
Yeah, they didn't do, all of them didn't do the same relaxation before the first testing of the 0 point.
Not exactly.
No,
No. So that's a good point.
It could be
standardize more.
some have been more active during the warm-up.
Maybe. Yes. Additions? No. Okay. So I hope you get a little bit of glimpse of how we look at the way we work. And then there is something in addition to that. What I would like to call, we had a training philosophy, our way of looking at training and testing, and we also have a coaching philosophy. And it's always nice to have some American quotes there. I made this a long time ago, but it's still valid in my opinion. But I don't want to go into all these quotes. Gene likes to do that maybe. We're not going to do that. What it's saying is that I think Pernilla is a nice example. People said they were lucky that she won the Olympic gold medal. I don't think so. I think she had the opportunity and she was prepared to take it, and she did. And maybe others failed. That's part of the game. That's different than being lucky. She clearly had the capacity to do what she do. She showed this year as well. She's able to come close to those times, and hopefully in the future is going to beat them and is competitive to the rest of the world. I think you're never lucky when you win. You're just very good. This is the picture we use when we have training, when we have talks with swimmers. We always start from their ambition, their dream, their belief, or however you want to call it. That's what we always come down to. You want something. We're there to help you. Not the other way around. Of course we want them to swim fast, but we are not swimming. They are swimming. It's their ambition, it's their dream, it's their belief they can achieve something. And of course we are there to show them the potential and to lift them up. But if they don't have that dream, then forget about it. And that dream starts everything. Starts their motivation, starts the choices they make. And we are there to show them that brings responsibility. You cannot have a dream and make all the wrong choices. It doesn't make sense. Then you're not responsible. Okay? So it's very nice if a swimmer comes in the pool, you have a talk with them and say, I want to be the next Olympic champion. And I think a lot of young swimmers could say that. But not a lot realize that they need to start to make choices. They need to take responsibility and have the discipline to reflect on it. And that's the picture we try to get them in every time we have an individual talk, or even at the pool during a training. Sometimes it can be very short, but it comes down to this picture. This picture is my belief in swimming, basically, my coaching belief is this picture. Always comes down to is I always try to attack the swimmer on their beliefs, on their ambition, on their motivation. If that's not there, it's not going to happen. Because I'm not swimming. And if I would, I wouldn't have an eating. But that's just my physical disability, I guess. And so this is where we help them in every single day. And I think this is where most of our time could be spent more efficiently. And we are in the fortunate position that we only have a few swimmers to work with. You have a lot more swimmers to work with. And then this is becoming more and more difficult. You cannot have talks with 600 swimmers on a daily basis. That's just not working. That's already a challenge with the 10 we have. Yeah? So That's difficult, but I do believe this is where we can make a big difference. It's about attitude, it's about mindset. And we talked about it yesterday, actually, for those who were there, a little bit. That's the thing we need to change. If we're able to do that, we get motivated behavior, responsible athletes, and they will have the discipline to proceed, but not the other way around. So, again, coaching philosophy, very nice American quotes, but this is what it's all about. Bringing them back to the basics. Why they started in the first place? Because they love swimming. They should never lose that, and never lose that perspective. So that's what we should always remind them of. And that sometimes means it's hard, it's tough. I think somebody yesterday said about you, you're getting weak. I don't think you're getting weak. It's not about you. It's about your swimmers. Are they getting weak? I mean, if you're weak, that's no problem. They should not get weak. And it's our responsibility to show them. And that's different now from 30 years ago, probably. I wasn't there, but some of you were. The world changes. So we need to find different ways to get into the brain of the swimmer. And that's, to me, it's a very important task we have. And I don't have all the answers, but I do know we need to keep searching and need to keep learning and need to be open-minded ourselves to find ways to bring this picture to the brain.
If I look at it, so both the experience of a former swimmer myself and then now coach, I think there's one key part missing, which would be, maybe it's innate, but I feel like when you feed only of the goal, the dream, and all the choices that you take, it's subjective to that dream. It's again, you're constantly making choices every single day. So you wake up and you choose to wake up early, right? And you go and you have your meal and you choose to be healthy. And then it gets late in the afternoon after practice and you choose to have a nice recovery meal and go early to bed. And I think it is a really good tool as long as the swimmer has this dream. What happens to this swimmer who already has qualified for Olympic Games 3 times and he already has been in the final, he already has won the medals? What is next for them, right? And it's always the whole time finding this key for them to be fired up. So I like it, but at the same time, I think it has also to do a lot, if I learned, it has to do a lot with positive habits. So, and not taking choices. You know, you wake up in the morning and you don't question it, and you don't do it because of your goal, but you do it because you are used to it, and it feels like a natural thing. The same with the food. You don't take the right choice, you just have the right habit, and you just eat healthy. So I think it's a balance between both, if you want to be more on the long term. And that's what I've kind of learned as I've seen more and more, swimmers struggling with the motivation.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I think we are in the discipline area now, when something becomes almost a habit. Same in swimming, we hope good swimmers are used to make a nice catch and a good push. That becomes a habit. They don't think of that. It's not. It is still a choice, I think, but it's more unconscious choice. They constantly make. They know they have to make that. But of course, this picture changes, or the content of it changes when you progress through your career. It's different when you are at your 3rd or 4th or whatever Olympics and have won maybe several medals. That's different. I mean, well, you have trained with one of them, Peter. At the end of his career, his ambition to be the best was still there, but it was also work. He had a house, he had a family, so some of the content of this picture was different, for sure. And that brings different choices, for sure. Different responsibilities, for sure. Yeah. Any other additions or questions?
For some athletes, I know, like Ole Einar Bjørndal, he's a biathlon shooter, It's like a little sport, but he has won everything. And he's been there like for the last 20 years. And he's going for his like, 8th Olympics or something like that. But it's a sport. And he's still, and he's 43, 44 years old now. And yeah. So he still says, I still try to do the perfect race. I want everything. I haven't yet had 100% perfect race. So I want to do 100% perfect race in my last race, like in the Olympics in 18. That's what's driving me. Yeah, it's the money side also, because there's a big star in Germany and Austria, everywhere, Switzerland. But he searched for the perfect race.
I think that the best of the best do that. Yes, I take Anthony Irving, for example. I think he's a very interesting.
He says like this: if I have kids, and now he's getting a kid or got a kid, in 25 years, if my kid is doing the same sport as I do, what will he be able to do in 25 years? I try to do it now. I try to be as good as they are, kind of like in 25 years. So he tries to put himself on another scale and try to reach that. And he's always almost like in that zone. He's always there when it's like about medals, about like, yeah, it's a little sport, not like swimming, but it's like the toughest ski sport, I think, because it's much better for more people.
No, but I think we have a similar example in our sport. Michael Phelps must have some kind of motivation like that as well. I mean, there was no, for an outstander, there were not a lot of reasons why he needed to continue after Beijing. I mean, he did everything he could dream of. But it wasn't enough. He was still hungry. And he wanted more. He wanted to become the biggest Olympians ever with most medals and whatever. And finally, 2 Olympics later, with a lot of struggle in between, he made that goal. And then he said, that's okay. But that's only, I think, only a few in the world who can do that. But that's also comes down to that belief, this example you give, the belief, or the desire to show the world that he's ahead of his game, basically. And just see how long that takes. Yeah, we'll see. That's his passion. That's good.
And what do you think right now is the weakest point and the strongest point on the NGC team?
In this picture?
Yes.
That's a very good question. I think the weakest point, to start with that, is the taking responsibility part. I think a lot of them have the dream, the ambition in words, and somewhere inside. But they simply don't always know what are the choices and what is the responsibility that comes with that ambition. And I see that as our task to educate them, which might cost a few swimmers in the end. That's possible. But it also might bring some very good ones. And the strong point is, I think, all of them come there every day because they love the sport.
I see the same problem with the youth or juniors in my club in Denmark 1.5 years. And the kids are pretty used to getting told what to do. They're not reflective. From a young age, I think maybe that's what's still there. They're not very reflecting, don't make choices for themselves and where they're going. And I think it's up to us club coaches to really teach the swimmer at a young age to take responsibility. That, like you said, you're not swimming. Teach them, and they don't tell them what to do all the time. Make them think about what to do and why.
Well, that's why a simple thing we did this morning, like Nessa explained, you give them, this is the volume you need to do. These are the requirements in terms of time and efficiency. You can divide it any way you like, as long as you meet those criteria. It makes them at least think a little bit more, instead of just going up and down, and probably they won't die before the end of it, so they will make it. Do they make it in the way we want them to do? And think those small things can help, for sure. Yeah. But it's funny what you say, because it's one of the first things when I came and talked to people in Denmark, what was said to me, like the Danish society is spoiled because everything is there. Well, I think in the Netherlands it's the same deal, so it wasn't that different for me. Is that a bad thing? I don't think so. We only need to learn how to deal with it. And I think soccer is a great example. Some of the young soccer players who get to the big teams and earn all of a sudden a lot of money, they drown because they have no clue what to do with it. You need to learn that. But having more options is not always a bad thing. You just need to make the right choices. Then we come back to this picture. That's where we come in the picture. We need to help them. And yeah, sometimes they say, yeah, when you have no options and you're almost ground broken, it's much easier because then the choices are more visible because there's only one choice. In the end, that doesn't make a difference. It comes from the inside.
What do you feel is your guys' responsibility after the swimming pool? So you have the dream, you have the Olympic gold medal as a dream, you put everything aside, you just go for this. And then there are even some, I'm from Sweden, and we had a wrestler, like, he won his gold in, I think it was Beijing, 2 years after, he hung himself. You know, he achieved what was the biggest dream of his life, and then he wakes up a year and a half later, and he just recognizes this. Okay, this wasn't what I was supposed to. So how do you educationally, and I mean, because there is and not everybody's Michael Phelps who makes like millions of dollars.
No, we are in a sport where that's only for the very few,
yeah.
And a lot of them just train their asses off and will never make a lot of money.
Exactly.
But they love it. I think we have a responsibility there, but I also think that one's responsibility is a little bit, and not to push it away, in the shoes of Team Denmark, and being responsible for the Danish Olympic movement, basically. But we need to help them fill the gap, basically. I've seen too many swimmers from very close by and quit the sport with no clue what to do. They didn't know anything else about swimming. Some of them even quit their education because of their swimming. So they were done 6 years later, no education, and now what?
Exactly.
I think elite sport has a value in society nowadays, more and more and more, so companies are interested in having people with that background attached to their companies, but it's not like they get top salaries just because they are who they are. That's only the same few who already earned a lot of money. Yeah. So there's a responsibility in that area for sure, but it's not an easy one to just say this is how we do it and
no, it's
it
a
works.
balance, and it's individual also, of course.
Yeah. But they need help, for sure. For some of them, at least. More questions? Or mass additions?
I don't know, I've been a coach in Denmark, of course, and in Canada and like other places. And I say, like, I work with Martin now, and like you said in the beginning, you're a scientist, and I think that is one of the things that I learn on a daily basis is like you get so much information, and like there's so many things that you can actually do, but it all boils down to really simple concepts all the time, and like developing the practices, making the practices a little bit harder every time, and making smart choices about the information that you get and how to make the athlete better. And I really like numbers are numbers. Like I think this is more what it is about like making the athletes aware of what they want to do and what it takes, and trying to show them the path to how to walk it. I don't really have any additions other than that. He'll do this next year in Danish, by the way.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, there you go. Well, keep
I
me
promised
honest.
myself, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the long way to go. And that has a lot to do, because you just don't say what you write, and that's not easy for us. Okay, I think we leave it here, Dean.
Good.
Okay.
All right, everybody, 5 minutes. Grab a coffee, go to the bathroom, and then Thomas and I will wrap it up.